Hey, it's Dawn from Dawn's Dirt. Dirt can mean gardening, dirt can mean animals, dirt can mean farming, dirt can mean agriculture, dirt can mean business, dirt can mean politics, dirt can mean religion, dirt can mean anything I want it to mean because it's my show. So here we are. Today is super duper super exciting. This is episode 50. I have made it to 50 episodes recorded and put out there for your enjoyment. 50 is so exciting, so excited to have you here. And I just want to start out by saying thank you. Thank you to you, the listeners. Thank you to the followers. Thank you to the people that share my stuff. Thank you to my team. Thank you to Carly. Thank you to Haley. Thank you to Tara. Thank you to Tracy. Thank you to my business coach, Kaylor. I would not be here sitting in this seat without a team behind me. And so thank you to all of you. On my farm, I used to go into my packing shed. So people would pick the vegetables for me. And I had a great team of people. I had up to 30 people on payroll at one point. And I used to say to my team, without my team or without you guys, I don't have a farm. And it's true in this business as well. So without the listeners, without the people helping me to make this all work, I would not have Dawn's Dirt. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So today's episode is really special to me. I'm going to open up and pour my heart out into this episode. I want to tell you my story of where I've come from, and I want to give you the best business advice I was ever given. And so, yeah, that's what we're going to expect in this episode. Some of my story and some of the best business advice I was ever given. So if you've met me, you know that I love people more than I love life itself. People drive me. Even when I had my farm, my customers drove me. I loved the people that surrounded me. I loved the relationships I built. I loved my staff. I loved, there was sometimes a few people drove me crazy, but for the most part, I love people. I love people the same as me. I love people different than me. Ironically, when I had my farm, my best customer voted very differently than me in the election. And my best customer actually vaccinated during COVID very different than me as well. And so getting through some of those barriers and blocks, just realizing that both our bloods run red and we're the same in so many ways. We just think a little different. And so people is what drives me in my business, but that's not the best business advice I've ever had or was ever given. The best business advice I was ever given was by a man named Joe Doof from Doof's Greenhouse in Lacombe. And, it was many, many years ago, and I don't remember what the incident was or why we came up to this, why we ended up talking about this. But we were having a problem on the farm. And Mr. Doof said to me and then my ex-husband at the time, he said, "You're missing the point." He said to us, "Who owns your business?" And we said, "Well, we own the business." And he said, "No, you don't. The Lord owns your business. Jesus owns your business. And so you need to talk to the owner. When you have an issue in your business, you need to talk to the owner." And, that was so freeing to know that, I didn't own the farm. The Lord owned the farm. And I don't own Dawn's Dirt. The Lord owns Dawn's Dirt. And I go to the owner often and I say, "What would you like me to do? And how would you like me to do it?" Because that is where it's at. The buck stops with the owner. I'm not the owner. The Lord is. And so that was the best business advice we were ever given because it takes the weight and the pressure off. It just meant that I, as the steward of this business, of the farm, had to do the very best job I could. But at the end of the day, it wasn't up to me. It was up to the owner as to what happened. Now, after selling the farm, I asked the owner, why did I have to sell the farm? That just doesn't make sense to me. And we'll get into a few reasons around that later on in the episode. But, it's up to the owner and what he wanted to do. And it hit a point that I had to sell the farm. Are you sitting on a farm or homestead that could be making you real money? Tired of guessing on how to market your products? I owned a 36,000 square foot greenhouse. I ran 2 farm to table stores. I had 30 people on payroll. I brought in $2.5 million in gross revenue in 2020, selling farm goods directly to customers. Now I teach farmers and homesteaders how to make money and save money off the land they already have. Whether you're selling eggs, beef, produce, baked goods, or anything in between, if you want to get into direct marketing and grow your sales, I'm the girl for you. Stop leaving money on the table and start putting it into your bank account. Join me at Dawn's Dirt Business Coaching and let's make your farm pay you back. In light of this past week, so we are almost a week after Charlie Kirk's passing. And, I just want to highlight that here right now. Charlie Kirk was a man who was controversial and not condescending. He had people from all walks of life come into his lineups to have conversations with him. He was very respectful, even though he didn't share the same opinion. And so Charlie Kirk actually had a quote, and I really, really like this quote. He said, "You're commanded to go and do something productive with your life, to give and to produce, to risk, and then to go sow into other people. That's a biblical idea that has made the world a profoundly better place." Charlie Kirk. And so that's where it's at for me with my former farm and with this business now. It's about the people and the relationships. It's about sowing into other people. And then ultimately, it's about sowing and producing food. That's what I'm here for. I sowed plants when I had my farm, and then I harvested plants. And here I am now teaching people, and I am sowing the seeds in how to do farm to table and how to do community. And we will reap the benefits together as community. So, Charlie Kirk is a bit inspirational, and in light of it's so sad for Erica Kirk. But, that quote just hit me really, really hard this past week. And, yeah, so that's why I'm here. I am here to teach people how to grow food. Thank you, Charlie Kirk. I want to get into a little bit of my history and my journey. So as most of you know, I had a 36,000 square foot greenhouse. I did 20 acres of garden. That's where I landed. That's where my farm ended up. I owned 2 farm to table grocery stores. I sold all my produce at farmers markets. I had chickens for eggs. I've done meat birds in the past. I've had cows in the past. I had sheep. I had 35 ewes when I sold my farm. I did food. I did food for people. I ran farmers markets, and I did food truck frenzies as well. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a tic-tac-tician entrepreneur. And so that's where I ended off. And I sold my farm in the fall or January 2024, I guess, is when I sold my I call it my empire. But my beginnings were humble. I was born in Calgary, and I want to say 1985, we moved out west of Airdrie to a little greenhouse, Simon's Valley Greenhouse. And my parents started that greenhouse, and they were in a partnership with another couple, and it went sideways. And I don't really want to get into all the ins and outs of that, but their partnership went sideways. But what they were doing was they were growing cucumbers in a greenhouse. They bought this dilapidated old greenhouse, and they fixed it all up, and they were growing cucumbers and selling them off to people or off to the warehouse in Calgary. I can remember being 5, 6, 7 years old, and my mom would do the shipping of the cucumbers. So we had an old station wagon. It wasn't a very big greenhouse. So they would pick all the cucumbers and wrap all the cucumbers and put them all in boxes. And they would shove all these cucumber boxes. It was in the 80s, right? So they would shove all these cucumber boxes in, and anywhere there was a little crack or a little crevice, that's where mom put her kids. So sometimes we'd ride on top of the boxes, or, in the back, we'd have to sit in a little tiny seat or whatever it was. She fit all her kids in there. And we went to Calgary to ship these cucumbers. And I can remember I have vague memories, because I was 5 or 6 years old at that point in time, vague memories of doing that. When I was in grade 1, who does this? This is crazy. When I was in grade 1, I wrote a story called Dawn's Greenhouse. And I found that little book later later on in my journey, and I posted it. I had it up in Simons Valley Ranch Farmers Market, and then the market burnt down, unfortunately. So I lost my book from when I was grade 1. But it was Dawn's Greenhouse. So who writes about their career when they're 5 or 6 years old? It's crazy. It's insane. But I had a greenhouse for many, many years. So my parents moved to a different place. They had another greenhouse. That's where Shirley's Greenhouse was born. That's my former farm. Look them up. They're great, great farmers now that I sold to. Please support them. And yeah, so they started Shirley's Greenhouse. I can remember having to go to work for my parents. If you didn't work, you didn't eat. And I got fired from my dad. I guess that's the first job I was ever fired from. But yeah, we had to work. We had to help out. We had to like fill these sawdust bags full of sawdust and, like wrap them up. And yeah, it was crazy times, but that's how I grew up. I grew up with parents who were my dad. My mom and dad, they always said Shirley's Greenhouse, Ted's headache, but my dad loved what he did, and he loved his staff. He loved the people that he worked with. He loved giving. He was a big, bold, vivacious, like big, bold man, and he would have given the shirt off his back for you. I got to tell the story about my dad. My dad, he passed away in 2009. So he's been gone 16 years now. But my dad just loved people, and he was a doer. He was a farmer, and he was a doer. He had lupus. So when he was diagnosed with lupus, the doctor said, well, Ted, most people die within 10 years. And my dad stood up and poked the doctor in his shoulder and said, there's only one person going to tell me when I'm going to die, and that's not you. And he walked out, and he made it, I don't know, 20 or 25 or however many years later. It was a long time, because he just didn't stop. That's business. He didn't stop. And one time he was in prayer meeting. They had prayer meeting for cubbies, and he was upstairs praying. Like, he drove all the kids to this like kids group, and then there was prayer meeting upstairs. So they were sitting in the prayer meeting praying, and they were praying for a cubbies leader downstairs. So Lord, can you please provide a leader, someone to help with the children? Mid prayer, my dad stood up and said, well, I guess I'm going downstairs to help, because we can sit up here and pray about it, or we can go downstairs and do something about it. And so he didn't go to prayer meeting after that. He just helped with the kids club, because, he fixed the problem. And yeah, that's who my dad was. He, very, very big and very bold man. Another time too, he said to the church, they were doing a building fundraiser, and he said, well, I don't have money. And he didn't. He was a farmer. He, money in, money out all the time. He didn't have money. He said, but I do have food. I do have cucumbers. And he said, I want the building fund to sell these cucumbers to the members of the church, and we will deliver the cucumbers to the church on Sunday mornings, and we'll put them in the mailboxes of the people. And so that's what he did. Was he donated cucumbers, and other people donated money. They got a cucumber. He got the money, or the church got the money, and he was able to do what he was able to do with what he had, which was food. He had cucumbers to give, so he gave his cucumbers to the Lord, and the Lord turned around and eventually built a church. So yeah, that's who my dad was, and I'm proud to say that I'm a little bit like him, and I'm thankful for those parts of him in me. So my dad, as much as he probably didn't admit that the Lord owned his business, the Lord owned his business as well. Joe Doof was very instrumental in my dad's farming greenhouse business. And he also was instrumental in mine. Hey friends, on Dawn's Dirt, we get real about growing food, farming, homesteading, living free, and digging into the stuff that actually matters. If you're loving the dirt we're dishing out, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow on your favorite social media platforms. That's how we keep growing this community of badass, soil-covered, chicken-loving, freedom-chasing humans. Like and subscribe to me on Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, you name it. Come be part of the movement. So forward, my parents had their greenhouse by Airdrie. They built a different one. They had 26,000 square feet. They did long English cucumbers. They took them to the warehouse. They made a great living at it. In 2007, they sold their greenhouse, and me and my ex-husband built ours. And so we built a 36,000 square foot greenhouse, and we were going to do the same thing. Long English cucumbers for wholesale. And eventually it didn't work. We got into it. Our first year was a total flop. We had the bug thrip. I don't know if you know what that is, but a little bug thrip. We had thrip so bad. And when you sell cucumbers to the grocery store or to the warehouse, they have to be long and just perfect shape, no bend or curl to them. And all of our cucumbers that year had a curl to them because the thrip would bite the little baby cucumber and it would make it curl. And so it was basically almost a crop failure. And my dad was with us, helping us at that point in time. And, but we just kept going. And over the next several years, we figured out that wholesale was not our gig. Selling cucumbers to a wholesaler was $7 a dozen. To the store, it was $12 a dozen, and to consumer, it was $18 to $24 a dozen. So we started doing farmers markets, and I actually got into farmers markets. So I went to my first farmers market, was selling cucumbers for 50 cents a piece, and people were saying, "Oh, that's too low, that's too low." And I said, "I'm just happy to get rid of some of them at that price." And then we had a few tomatoes that year, and people went, "Ooh, we really like these tomatoes. You should grow more of these." So the next year we grew a few more tomatoes. The next year we added a farmers market, and pretty soon I was working my tail off. I was at a farmers market 3 weeks after my third C-section, which is crazy, but I was selling produce to people. And we were selling to the grocery stores, and eventually we stopped with the wholesaler, only doing grocery stores and farmers markets, and eventually the bureaucracy in the grocery stores got too much, so we were only selling to farmers markets, and we made a great living for many, many years. I was in business, in the greenhouse business for ourselves from 2007 all the way up to 2024. And so that's my years of experience. We grew cucumbers, tomatoes, peppers, and then 20 acres of garden, potatoes, carrots, onions, beets, zucchinis, cauliflower, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, you name it, squash, pumpkins, lettuce, kale, chard, all the things. It's actually shorter to tell you the list of the things that we didn't grow than we did grow in that garden. And so, yeah, made a great living. It was so good, so much fun. I added the stores. I added, all the different intricacies, all the different businesses I got into. Yeah, it was just all connected back to the farm. So in 2024, I made the very, 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 very hard decision to put the farm up for sale. Fall 2023 was really, really hard. And again, back to the best business advice. I prayed and I said, "God, what are you doing? Like, why do I have to sell the farm?" And I was $100,000 short to make it into the next season. So in farming, in agriculture, you kind of go in the hole, in the hole, in the hole to make enough money to get a breath of air to go in the hole, in the hole, in the hole again. And I got to fall 2023, and I knew that I was $100,000 short. I didn't know what I could sell, how I could finagle, how I could maneuver, how I could fix or trick it into making it go one more year. And I made the hard decision to put the farm up for sale. And I prayed and I said, "God, why do I have to do this?" And again, bring it back around to people. People drove me on my farm. When I had my farm, I was able to trade off that bag of food bank items with the one woman, and she would come to my booth and she would bring me her bag of food bank items, Kraft Dinner and toothpaste and rice, and I would trade her for her full bag of vegetables. I didn't always pick my best vegetables, but if there was a scratch and dent one, that's what she got. Or, if I had too many potatoes, that's what she got. And she got a huge bag of vegetables from me. It was not a fair deal, but she gave me what she could, and I gave her what I could. And there's so many stories of that. When I had my farm, the kids that would come up and they'd say, "Can I have a tomato? Can I have a tomato?" I would break open bags of tomatoes and feed the children tomatoes because they just loved them. They were like candy. And I watched children grow up. I watched mothers have their babies. I built relationships with these people. One of my favorite customers was Stephanie and her son Cameron. They came to the booth every week for years and years and years. For the entire time I was in farmers markets in Calgary, she came to my booth and bought my tomatoes. At one point, it was kind of cute. Her one daughter, they had some tomato plants in their backyard, and her daughter said, "I like your tomatoes, Dawn, better than and then mom's tomatoes, right? Which, I lived for that. I lived for the relationship that I built with people. In COVID, Stephanie and I didn't see eye to eye, but she was respectful and she was kind. And I appreciated that. It was building the bridges rather than the barriers with my customers. My customers were the hardest part about selling the farm. The relationships I had built was the hardest part. I was able to give food to the food bank. I'm not sitting here telling you this to brag, but I was able to do what my dad did. My dad didn't have money, but he had food. So I was able to do what I was able to do with the resources that I had. In 2020 and 2021, when everything was going crazy and people were a little afraid, the people that were unvaccinated were actually quite afraid of the grocery store. They were afraid of the system and afraid of how will they get their food. And I had people coming to me and they said, you have food, right? Like when we can't get food at the grocery store anymore, because that was a genuine fear of theirs. They said, you've got food. And I said, come to my farm. Come to my farm and I'll look after you. So when I had to sell my farm, I prayed and I said, God, what's your plan? You're the owner. What's your plan for this farm? Because I felt so responsible for so many people. And it's just trust me. Trust me, Dawn. So through the course of 2024, I grieved and I've cried. The positive is I don't have $1 million of debt anymore, but I'm still trusting the owner. And I'm trusting the owner back into Dawn's dirt. And now I'm teaching people. If you give a man a fish, he eats for a day, but if you teach a man to fish, he eats for a lifetime. In the fall of 2024, I actually went on a little retreat with my business coach. I went to his retreat and we were walking through the streets of Kelowna. We were asked to write on a rock. We were asked to write on a rock things that we needed to let go of that are holding us back in life, that are holding us, back from moving on to the next thing. And on my rock, I wrote my history, my divorce, which was really, really hard, and my farm. I wrote those 3 things on a rock. And we were walking through the streets of Kelowna down to the lake. And it didn't strike me until just recently here that as we were walking through the streets of Kelowna, there was this massive zucchini that was sitting on an electrical box for somebody to take. It was just an extra zucchini that someone had. The joke is always, if you've got one zucchini, you've got 5 million of them, and you kind of knock on someone's door and leave a bag of zucchini on their doorstep and run away because, who wants all this zucchini? Or don't leave your doors unlocked to your car because you're going to have a bag of zucchini in your car. And there was this big zucchini sitting on an electrical box. And as we're walking down to the lake to throw that into the lake, I saw the zucchini and I thought that is where it's at. That is where our food system needs to go back to. We need to take our food system back into our own hands, take the freedom back into our own hands. He who controls the food controls the people. And, we need to grow gardens in our backyards. We need to be able to share. The more people I can empower and teach to grow gardens and to do farm to table business and teach what I did, the further it's going to go. We, the people, have the power to change the world. And I think that's where Dawn's Dirt is headed next. I've been coaching people for the last couple of years and I love it. I love it because people drive me. And so the more zucchini that we can produce and leave on the streets of whatever town we're in, that is freedom. That is what Charlie Kirk stood for, And that brings it back to the best business advice I was ever given, is I don't own it. And so, yes, selling it was very hard. Yes, giving it up, grieving it, and moving on to Dawn's Dirt has been very hard. But the future is bright because you're right. If you give a man a fish, he eats for a day. But if you teach a man to fish, he eats for a lifetime and he can put it back into his own community. My mission is to not just feed people, but to teach and empower others to do what I did, to be the one standing at a farmer's market one day saying, I've got food. I can feed you. Come to my farm. And again, we'll bring it back to the best business advice. Matthew 23:35 and 36. For I was hungry and you gave me something to eat, and I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you invited me in. I needed clothes and you clothed me. I was sick and you looked after me. I was in prison and you came to visit me. Jesus commanded us that when you see somebody who's hungry, you feed them. And that's what I want to do. That's where I want to take Dawn's Dirt. I want to empower more and more and more people to serve others. Where is the need? What can I do? And what resources do I have to help? Again, back to the Charlie Kirk quote. What are you doing to be productive in your life? What are you doing to be productive within your community and to help your community? What are you doing within your circle of influence? How are you creating a small business? How are you helping others in need? Because the more of us, we the people have the power. We the people have the power to change our world. We don't need a government. Here we are into politics. We don't need government to tell us what to do. We don't need government to tell us, give here or do this, share here, do that. We have the choice to do that ourselves. And when we're given resources or when we have our own companies, small businesses and things like that, we can give to others. And so, yeah, that's where it's at, is when we take our productivity and turn it around and sow it into others to give to others. That's where it's at. And the best business advice, the Lord owns it. So if you are listening today and if you don't know the owner, you know what? Send me a message. I'd love to have a conversation with you. Jesus is my king. Jesus runs my farm. Jesus had my business. Jesus has my back. Jesus owns me. And I'll go out talking for him just like Charlie did. But in the meantime, I'm going to work for him and I'm going to tell other people how to raise food, grow food, produce food, and share into their communities and love on the people that they're surrounded by. So the best business advice isn't about money. It's not about dollars. Who cares how many dollars you get in the door? It's not about that. It's about how can you help your community and how can you serve other people around you? Where is the need and how can you help? That is the best business advice. The Lord owned my farm and the Lord owns Dawn's Dirt. And how can I serve others to take what I was shown by my dad, by Jesus, and impart that wisdom and that knowledge to other people? So that's where it's at. It's about producing, feeding, building, and empowering others. So the question is, how will you sow into your community? How will you produce into your community? And how will you build something for the Lord in the places that you're at? So if you're in business right now and you're struggling, talk to the owner. Best business advice I was ever given. Thanks so much for listening in today, tuning in today. It's number 50, and I feel like it's just the start. So share the episode with others, tell others, follow. Yeah, appreciate you listening. Appreciate each one of you, and we'll catch you on the next one.